Okay, huge week again. We've just had some big announcements come out from OpenAI. So we're going to cover them all. We've got Codex is actually merging into ChatGPT, and they had a big event in New York, and they announced Sites, which is very interesting, kind of similar to Vercel, with you being able to host your own platforms, share them internally. We're going to get into that. We've also got team focused or role focused plugins. So combination of apps and skills focused around things like data analytics, product design, things like this. Also annotations, which is another thing that Codex can now do. And very excitingly, this sort of, like I mentioned, Codex actually merging into ChatGPT. So we're finally getting into super app territory, which we've all been waiting for. Lots of implications for all of this, actually across many industries. So I've heard a lot of rippling of different conversations. And so it means a lot. It's also very exciting just for the end users because it's actually great in terms of a product as well. So we will touch on all of that. We also were discussing, we could talk about token usage. Big conversation that's happening in a lot of companies at the moment. How are we managing that? Also, for those that might have missed it, during all the different stuff that's been going on this week, Copilot has also launched a super app. Hermes has launched an app. So we're starting to see kind of everyone move into a similar direction. Great to have you again, Han. Lots to cover today. How have you been
Hello,
this
everyone
week?
from Montreal. I'm in Montreal this week.
Very cool. Very nice. Very nice. What's brought you to Montreal?
Oh, visiting our friends.
Very cool. I love Montreal. I've actually got a lot of my family in Montreal.
Oh,
So
really?
go there quite a lot. Yeah, it's a great
Oh,
place.
I
Um,
I love it. The
and I
food is
think,
amazing.
yeah, food's amazing. I mean, it feels quite like Europe actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the Italian and French influence. So as we get into this, I think the first thing that we can do is we can also just look at the MCP app ecosystem and see how that's evolving. So let me just share my screen. And again, it's been another big week. I think like the first thing that I would mention actually is that we're starting to see a kind of just consistent uptake of ChatGPT apps. You can see here we've got you know, a massive uptick. We're now at like, what are we, 1,428. In the last week, we've had 143. So Claude has actually not increased a huge amount, right? It's 14 new apps, so like a couple, but we are really seeing ChatGPT apps just pick up again and again and again. If you go through the list and see which ones they are, there's some very funny ones we're starting to get now. So you've actually got mosquito hunters in South Lake, which
Is that like a
that
game? I
which
feel like we should
I
play
don't
one of
know.
these apps sometimes.
No, I think it is literally a pest control, which is actually like
This is so
awesome. This
interesting.
it's very interesting, and this is exactly the kind of specific and nuanced nature of what these apps can now do. Because you'd hope that someone like this actually could do really well. Because if you have this really unique prompt, they're going to capture it,
Yes.
right? You'd
Yeah,
assume,
yeah, yeah.
because there's not going to be any or very little competition, which is cool to see. So this is the fourth. So we can see here we've got a couple of different. We actually, what we do on the platform, by the way, is OpenAI doesn't have the best category mapping, so we actually map all the categories ourselves. And to be honest, we're sort of at the point now where there is really just a huge range of different apps that are getting accepted. And I can start doing sort of a breakdown. Some bigger companies, Dula, they help with company setup, company formation. Brex, another big one. Zillow got re-added. I think Datadog also re-added. Adobe, another app within Claude.
I think that there is, say, if you go in and you're like changing your app, I think that maybe it's not that they were re-added, but then they have to go through the review, and I think your app is not live until after you're reviewed. So I
Right.
think the period of like them like not being on the App Store is because they probably have an update and they have to wait for that update to get approved. I remember back in the day in iOS, like it's kind of like that. So like you're like trying not to have as many updates as possible because you do have some downtime when you update.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, you are at the mercy when you make these updates of their approval time. So like if you have also a really important update you want to make, then yeah, you have to wait. And actually, we think a lot about this from a discovery perspective, because when you're optimizing tooling, you have to go through that review cycle. So there are, a number of things to think about when you're going through that. A couple of interesting ones we're seeing this week. So Iberia is one. So this is the first sort of like official, actual flight company that I'm aware of, or one of, but maybe there was another
I saw
Israeli
Turkish
company as well.
airline.
Pardon?
Turkish airline is another one
Yeah.
that I saw. Yeah. So a lot of
Okay,
airlines
cool.
are coming out with their apps.
That's great. Great. Another one from Sonic Jobs, actually, a great team in the recruitment space with Disney Careers, which is really cool. Another one that I'm personally very excited about is Strava.
Oh yes.
So great to see Strava in there. I'm big runner, and so have honestly, it's been like a use case that I've thought about for ages, which is like it would just be great to be able to sort of like track and query your data and be able to kind of get more information from Strava. So I hope that's the direction they've gone in. Let's have a look. Don't have the descriptions, but yeah, get your performance, club info, activity. So that's very cool. So there's just more big names, and I will start to kind of get some like category breakdowns, over like a week period. For example, Trainline, another one, but we're kind of getting into a little bit outside of the week now. But yeah, loads more apps in short, and they really are a real range across many categories. Is in short what we're seeing.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how ChatGPT is going to expose this app. I've been playing with ChatGPT recently, and I've saw that their tool calling capability has improved greatly. Actually, can I show some of it?
Yeah, please do.
So, yeah, this is just I just noticed this in the last week. So it means that at the same time that they are approving more and more apps, they're also improving their tool calling capability. So I remember like before, like if we want to ask for our for my flight, I have to say at Expedia. Now I can just say, oh, find me flight from SF to London.
But even now, I think you'd have to tag it again because sometimes it doesn't even work.
And I mean, I don't know if they're still looking for available tools. So it knows that,
Mm.
like, oh, this is something that it doesn't know in this database. Let's just say this weekend, this Friday. So it knows that, it is something that it needs an external tools for it to complete my question. And you can see that I didn't even ask, I didn't say at Expedia. And we know this is possible because the paper about like this capability came out in November last year. So we know that it's only a matter of time until they implement it. It was in the API for Anthropic, I think, since December. But I do think like for a registry that is as big as ChatGPT of like thousands of apps, like searching across like 5 tools is definitely easier than searching across like like I don't know, hundreds of tools, because the user could have installed like hundreds of tools, right? So to
Yeah.
get performance for that, I think it's very interesting.
100%. And that's when I mean, first of all, really, really good to see this. And I think for a lot of people, I've seen this being rolled out in batches, but I think we're now at sort of like some users get access, some don't. But great to see. I think this is now pretty much universally rolled out now. So it's just great to see because the experience is so much better. And actually, this sort of discovery challenge, if you want to call it that, is just going to get bigger and bigger because you're going to have. I mean, at this point they have thousands of apps. If the ecosystem continues to grow, you're going to have millions. How do you actually create an effective discovery mechanism where you can make the assumption, unless you get way better, I suppose, just to be able to quickly scan every single app, every single tool, every single description, very difficult task. I mean, Google has incredibly sophisticated search. I do think it's possible, but nonetheless is an issue. How else can you solve for that challenge? Then that's where you get into keyword optimization and tool naming and other various channels to think about how are they going to distribute these apps, particularly when organic gets turned on. So
Yeah,
lots for companies to think about.
So just funny things here. I don't know if you see, let me see if I can see the full tool chain. But I saw that it was trying to call Expedia. It's trying to use Expedia because it found Expedia that is the right app for this query. But you can see here because Expedia didn't handle the error well, it I ended up have to revert to like, its regular response instead of using the Expedia. So I think app quality is something that people really, really need to care about when they're building this app because they can be like super optimized for their, like tool descriptions, you know, all everything. But if their apps error out, like they lose an opportunity to surface this to the customer. Like I find like the Expedia app has not has not been doing a good job of handling all the edge cases. And
Definitely. And I mean, yeah, yeah, go on.
I think that because testing for something that is deterministic, because there's just so many different ways that the person can ask, right? Like for me, like maybe I just assume that ChatGPT knows like when I wanted to find me flight from Manchester to London, so I didn't specify it. There's just so many different ways that the user could talk to your app, and I find that that is unfamiliar territory for a lot of the people building these apps. Um, that's why they were able to like. I'm sure if I say something like find me a flight from SFO to LHR June 7. I think that like for something that is a perfect query, I'm sure like they probably would be able to answer my query. But most user don't do that. Most user just say what they want to say, and if you're not like handling that cases, then your app do not get used.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, we work with companies a lot on this, so we see this a lot. How can you actually begin to do testing at scale? Because with platforms like Fractal, with these other no coding tools, like you can build these apps easily now, right? The building is sort of like actively being solved for, but what's difficult is how do you get this into work at scale? How do you get it to work for all the different prompts that people are using? How do you get it to work in multi-turn prompts? How do you make sure that it actually works when models change, when the harness changes? There's many other factors you have to constantly test. And so, yeah, you need to do at-scale testing and actually live in the client, because the client works very differently than if you're testing via an API, which is a really important differentiation that a lot of people don't handle. This is bizarre, though. I don't really know
Yeah,
what's
I
happening
have
here,
no idea what is going on here, but it just could not
because
like
it's finding Expedia and then just not working. So I think one, it seems like good that there is tools that are being called without, like, you have to connect to it still. That's important to mention, but then it will just use them. However, maybe it's just Expedia, but some things to be solved for here.
Yeah, let me see what else. What are the apps I have that I can try?
Adobe, maybe,
Let's try
or Voyage, hotel. You can
Voyage.
say
Yeah,
hotel.
but it's interesting. Like maybe find me hotel in London on June. I'm so curious now. I'm curious. Also, like because I have two travel app that can do the same thing, which is like finding me hotel. It's interesting that
Yeah, there you go.
it like to use Expedia as opposed to Voyage Privé. So like, so I think there's a few learning here. Is that if the sooner that you launch your app, like if you're like the only app in your category and you're the first to launch and people install that app, you already have an advantage because people would be kind of lazy and not installing a new app. But at the same time, if there's like a crowded category like travel now is like booming. And what would happen if like two companies doing the same thing? Like which one of that ChatGPT is going to pick, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
mean, this honestly, it's very interesting what's happening right now. That these tools are they're not picking up the app. Um, Maybe try
Let me see
adding it.
if I ask Voyage Privé.
So it may well be an Expedia problem.
Yeah, I want to see if it's an Expedia problem or not. I was
But
just saying that, oh, ChatGPT is improving his tool calling a lot. Now here
we'll
we
see.
are.
Maybe it's either an app or a ChatGPT thing. We'll find out. What I would say while that's loading is we are obviously looking incredibly deeply into the Claude organic discovery space, already seeing patterns and what we believe is a detailed overview as to how Claude is recommending these apps. What's interesting? Oh, here we go. Is that a voice preview thing? Still going. Yeah, they are. We're seeing a number of factors that they're choosing to load them, and actually, what's interesting is it's obviously there's a search going on, and Claude we're seeing a pattern as to how they're doing it. But what's interesting is that that's just one factor. Things like this, right? Does your app work? Do people have a good experience? Do people come back? We expect all of these kind of things to definitely be factors that determine. Okay. Will it continue to surface your app, or will it surface some other? So it's interesting to see this is not working super effectively, right? This seems like a
Yeah,
voice preview thing.
no, I feel like, yeah, it's very interesting because let's see what it say. Yeah, I saw one of the things that was interesting is that it say that, something was blocking. So I wonder if they think that, this is like bot API and just block it. Because it say that the API got blocked. So yeah, like I think that right now we're adding like the automatically testing capability into Fractal. So if you build it Fractal, we will be able to like generate a different prompts, for you to test a wide variety of things that people could be asking, so that you could, help you test. But yeah, I feel like knowing how to test this app is like incredibly important. And
Yeah.
obviously testing it in like the live environments, because I bet like something like this work in the API or in a lot of preview, but it doesn't work here. Obviously, it thinks that
Yeah. So
ChatGPT is
actually,
bot traffic.
yeah, something that's interesting is I just tried it and it did work on mine. Let me just quickly show. So this actually came through very quickly. So probably took about 3-4 seconds maybe to come through, which is cool. But I did tag it. So let me try. Let me see if I say. So we tested that. If I just say this, let's see if how it decides to respond and whether or not it decides to pick up a tool or not. Yeah, made
Yeah,
some
so it always use
assumptions.
the search tool, which is great.
Booking.
Oh, it's big booking for you.
Yeah, interesting, right?
Okay, so it
So
looks like booking works.
yeah, so once you
Yeah,
have a
everything
range
looks
of
good.
these connectors that appear, it will then select.
Yeah, I have no idea if it's my my client, or if it is maybe an intermittent error from the app.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
think app quality is super important because you're gonna lose on that query.
100%. Yeah, but I think in general, like even just looking at that although we had some bugs there, even just the responses that I'm getting now, that they're much quicker. So that's generally good. But it's just a call out to companies like you've got to make sure that you test these things properly and they work at scale, because yeah, everyone's going to be running them, and then
I,
we need to see if it
actually,
works or not.
can you share screen again? I want to do a
Yeah,
small experiment.
yeah.
Can you ask it to find you flight and hotel?
Separate window.
Yeah, I'm curious what it's going to do. Because like people, like when people have an intention, right? The intention may not be like, oh, I want to fly. Maybe it like plan my travel for me. So I'm curious how ChatGPT it would handle something like these.
Yeah, I don't know because I also don't know which connectors that I have. Relevant live search tools now. And,
You know, like, these lean into something that we should totally discuss about is that the fact that Codex is coming to ChatGPT. I do see that this looking more and more like Codex, you know, with like
yeah, it is.
a multi-steps, like it
No
just,
way. This is very cool. So look,
right?
this is actually pretty new. So it's now selecting multiple tools in a chain to serve my query. It's actually multiple apps to serve the need. First time I'm seeing this actually. Very cool.
Yeah, so I actually saw that when I was looking into doing like generative UI is because for me to do generative UI, like we do need the harness to support tool chaining, which means that it can call like multiple tools in a row. And I know that Claude always support that.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it was surprising to me when I come to ChatGPT and I was like, whoa, like that works in
Yeah,
ChatGPT.
this is definitely new, and actually it's great because it means that, you can actually have multiple tools that serve a need, and actually when you get to generative UI, that can be bundled together in a nicer way. It wouldn't have to always feel like separate. So very good that they have this actually. Good
Yeah,
find.
and I think it's also cool too when you're looking at discovery as well because you know like maybe like everyone is trying to optimize for like oh find me the flight, but you know they're not optimizing for like hey you know plan me the entire trip. So it does expand the surface quite a lot into like what and I also think that it would improve like the overall traffic for people as well. Like there's just so many points for your app to get exposed now.
Yeah. Yeah, spot on, spot on. And honestly, frankly, it's just great to see that this tool calling's happening, and we're seeing multiple apps, appear within single prompts. It's great to see this kind of progression. Now, maybe then it makes sense to actually just move into to the Codex announcements, because I think it's quite a good segue from us seeing better tool calling within ChatGPT. So I'll give a quick headline just to explain to everyone what we've seen this week, and then we can dive into the specific topics. So OpenAI had an event in New York a couple of days ago. And at that event, they had many different executives from some of the top companies globally and many of their customers. And there they announced a number of things. That the one of the core components, it was generally about Codex, a lot about Codex, but one of the core things that they announced is actually that Codex is coming into ChatGPT. So what that means is that they were just finding that, people don't want to think about, oh, I need to go to this app to do this, I need to go to this app to do this. They just want their work that they want to complete to be triaged. That's one thing. The second thing that they're seeing is actually Codex has had the most insane growth trajectory. I think I don't want to misquote, but they are at,
I think 5 million.
and they're seeing an insane growth. It's been like 400% increase in growth, I think, since the beginning of this year. So they have basically then been interested in, okay, well, what is the type of work? And it's actually not just coding. It's actually a lot of knowledge work. And so as part of that, they have a range of different announcements that they put out, and actually they have a good blog. So I will just share screen, and we can talk through them. So this is, we'll share this also in the notes, but this is the main thing that came out, and it's, Codex for every role, tool, and workflow. So they really are going after, all coding and knowledge work. And the first thing that they have is sites. Now,
That is
Han, I
interesting.
think do you want to talk about explain sites a bit, and then we can talk about this, because it's very interesting for the sort of, I think, many verticals, to be honest.
Yeah, so site pretty much allow you to, so you know, Codex has always been able to code, but it doesn't like allow you to deploy. So you do have to be an engineer, you know a little bit on how to set up your deployment to be able to prompt it to deploy. But it looks like with site, like it would deploy it for you and give you a private link that you can share with your friends. What is very interesting is that if you look at like the main users for like V0, Replit, and Lovable, the I'm sure there's like a lot of people trying to build like the next new app and making their MVP using this app, but I've heard that the majority of use cases for Replit, Lovable, V0 is for internal use. So like you can make like a small website and then, do a little bit of something and that, for example, like track inventories or like collaborate with some of your coworkers. And, it doesn't have to look like perfect because it's just for internal tools. These pretty much allow you to do that. You don't need to like learn how to deploy, or like you can like create prototypes very very quickly using Codex, because now Codex not only able to code but it can also publish, deploy your website.
Yeah. So am I right in saying that at the moment this is for internal use? So, you're not publicly having this as a website yet, although, to be honest, I totally think that will be the direction.
I think
But
so
what this
too.
does allow you to do is basically build it, and then in your organization, you can then share that site. So exactly like you said, Han, I think if you're Lovable, if you're Replit, if you're someone that is like an app website builder, yeah, I mean, this is I think competing with that niche, because like you said, for a lot of people that use Lovable, I know people big, for example, I've got a friend that's in the insurance space, big insurance company. They use Lovable a ton for things like prototyping features, all these kind of things. Suddenly that's so much easier to share now, because you're not having to like share screenshots or some sort of thing. You just share a link, right, and it's live.
Yeah, and something that I thought was very interesting and was kind of like, I also use Replit and Lovable, is that Replit and Lovable doesn't have like access to your code base. So like when you do UI and all that stuff, it would create a UI. Maybe you're like doing some prototype, but it would create something that looked like completely different from what you already have. But Codex, like it run on your machine, you can have like all the code base in there and be able to prototype something that looks very similar or plug right into your existing website. So I think that is like a big advantage. So that someone who is like a designer or a PM can now like prototype their website and publish it and like share it with people in your organizations. I think that the probably the one reason they don't allow people to publish something like this publicly is probably security reason. But you know, as it get better, I think that that's like the obvious direction that they're going to go.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I think something that's interesting for sort of like, I think this audience, people that are building, infrastructure for agents, MCP, to have, your product, your data, your tools be used by agents. We'll get into the next announcement, which is, role focused plugins, right? But the really core message that I want to sort of leave here is, we are seeing MCP apps become infrastructure for knowledge work and for the tasks that consumers want to complete. And that's not only true within these plugins, which we'll get into, but that is also true for these sites. You can build a site, you can have that site run on the data from a plugin, right? It could be streaming from your CRM and having a live overview of all the different customer pipeline that you have. It could be setting up some sort of, task pipeline based on your linear, right? Leveraging your linear app. There's many different things that you can do. And this can all be built on top of the infrastructure that is MCP apps. And so it's also exciting for that nature in terms of, getting your product used and discovered by agents.
I think that they are focusing on knowledge work as like like the first stepping stone. But I do see that the fact that Codex is moving into ChatGPT, like I can't see why it doesn't work for consumer. Like for example, like travel booking. I think that is a big use case that I'm sure can be done like in the same way. Like instead of having like data analytics plugin, would be like travel planning plugin, or
100%.
yeah, and any kind of
Yeah.
category. I'm doing like home renovation right now, and I was like, oh, like I totally do like a home renovation plugin. It would be super useful.
100%. And actually, we'll get on to like the plugin side of things just very quickly, because I think it's very interesting to just to see these plugins. And then, yeah, I think chatting about the direction of where this goes, particularly for consumer, is a super interesting topic. So, um, in what they've done is maybe quickly, actually, I'll reopen the announcement. So in here, what they've said is that they now have role specific plugins. So what this means is that you have different roles. So you have data analytics, creative production, sales, etc. And there are plugins specific to these roles. So this might be reminiscent for those people that remember the Claude announcement and actually whole stocks going down within like legal sectors, for example, because Claude has bundled together some sort of legal plugin. It's very similar, right? There's actually very little difference between them. So it's a combination of MCP apps and skills specific to a certain job function. So the idea is you install that skill, you connect to the relevant apps that are useful for you, and then it is built from the ground up to do that role really, really well. So you can just add that plugin. Let's say you're doing skills tasks. So you can say, okay, use skills, and now I'm going to go through and do it, and it will pull in the right applications and skills for you. And this is true across, we've got here, they've started with these 5, but actually they're rolling out to many, many more. And on top of that, which is, we'll get into kind of this whole like App Store conversation and what happens to the App Store and how does that link to ChatGPT. But they have said that they are rolling out to more roles. So corporate finance, private equity, market strategy, strategy consulting, legal. And then they will, also talk about, this is just a start, and they're building towards an open ecosystem where partners can create and deploy their own plugins directly in Codex and ChatGPT. Now, this is interesting for a number of reasons. First of all, like just on this role specific plugin stuff specifically, I just think this is incredibly useful. Like I used to be a strategy consultant. I can just imagine how much you can just roll through the kind of task that is expected of this kind of role with just a couple of apps and frankly just some skills. You can imagine that massively for legal, frankly all these roles. And so it's very interesting just as an evolution, but also massive for companies. If you think about, as a company, if you have a product that could really well suit, for example, if you take an easy one like sales, right? If your sales tool is within this plugin and you are the one that's chosen, it's huge, right? Like think about, obviously you have the obvious people here, right? But then you have a company like Outreach, not as big, right? But they're now in this plugin, and suddenly they have the distribution of being in the plugin store within Codex, being installed, and being like, oh, wait, hold on, this is a really good tool for outreach, let me use it. And, what we'll probably see is like a huge evolution of the App Store that revolves around these plugins, and you'll have a whole category of different sales stuff that you could pick. And if you pick a different task, you could have it organically surfaced, for example, and you will discover new plugins that you might never have known about. And that will all come later down the line. But it's not just exciting for people using them. It's a big opportunity for companies to get inside of these workflows as well.
Yeah, say if you're like a company, you just adopted AI and, what it would be your first step, right? Like if you have a Codex enterprise subscription, the first thing you do is just to test, all these different roles. So just being a tool in one of these roles is just like massive growth. I think like OpenAI has the kingmaker ability now.
Yeah, totally.
But I
I
also
think,
do think that there are going to be more plugins that I've heard that they're going to have a plugin. Actually, it's not. I heard it's already there. There's like a plugin app store now, so
yeah.
you can probably create your own roles. They're missing a lot. They're missing. This is like probably the ones that ChatGPT is like probably the biggest market, but for some more niche area.
Yeah.
Like they haven't even touched that. So like the
No.
opportunity is still huge.
Yeah. And I mean, like, really, this is just the beginning, and you can't just. It's useful to bundle these things, but really, there's going to be so many different tools that you're going to need. Think about as a salesperson, not everyone uses the same tools. Everyone has different requirements. Everyone has different permissions. You will want to have a category that's useful for you. So you can see it here, right? If I go into data analytics, you're going to have this category. This app list is going to be huge, right?
That's true,
Right now
It's
it's
gonna grow
16.
quite a
It
lot,
can
yeah.
it could be thousands and thousands of apps, right? And then it can be thousands and thousands of skills. You could imagine from a skill perspective, probably the way it goes is it becomes a store in of itself. And actually over time, you can control which ones sit within your surface, which is kind of how it works now, right? There's all these apps you can choose from, but actually you can connect to the ones relevant to you. And actually, I think what we've all expected for some time is as you prompt, as you use these things, actually different plugins from the store, different apps inside plugins will organically surface to you. Oh, by the way, you could connect to this now, and this will help you to automate, for example, outreach if that's what you're doing, right? Because they will have that intelligence, and these apps, you shouldn't have to go and find them. They should come to you. But I definitely would recommend to people, get Codex, look at these plugins, install them, have a play with them. It's a very interesting development, and generally is also interesting for those people that are building, connectors. Final thing I would say on this is that is kind of this comment around as you can see from that press release, they talk about the connection between Codex and ChatGPT. A couple of things to point out. One is open ecosystem. That means, as far as I read it, anyone can then go and build a plugin. So kind of like the same way that you've seen ChatGPT App Store open up, we're going to see the same thing with Codex and plugins. So it's been selected partners, just like ChatGPT was, and you're going to see the same thing with plugins. What this also means is plugins will come to ChatGPT. So actually, it's not just going to be Codex that's going to have these plugins where it's a combination of apps and skills. It's actually going to be and even just an app with skills. It's that kind of thing is going to come to ChatGPT as well, which is great, Ham, because for example, let's say it's and you even mentioned this. We're talking a lot about knowledge work right now, but there is zero reason why this doesn't just work across the piece. If I want to book flights and hotels, I would love a great bundle of skills and apps that it can just select from and do that for me, right?
Yeah, there's just so many. I think travel is like a big categories, but like personal finance, for example. Yeah, there's just so many things that as human we need, and if we can see like what is in parallel to what has been, obviously OpenAI is gonna go for like the biggest opportunities, right? But if we can see what is parallel to this opportunity, but in a more niche space, I think that's a huge opportunity for people who are building. I am actually building like a bunch of MCP apps myself because I'm such a big believer in it, and I was like, oh, I'm like so early in this. Why am I taking advantage of, the fact that I know so much about this space, and I can see where the demands are going, and whatever if you pick a space where there are people that are slow to adopt, people who are the category that people are slow to adopt technology, I think that is like a great space to be in.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think there's, like you said, there's so much surface area of opportunity here. You're seeing that with all the different apps that are out there. And actually, there's many ways that this can evolve, but I think what we're seeing is generally Codex is becoming a harness. That means that ChatGPT will work better. We're seeing better ways that they're bundling these things together so that they actually work, skills, apps, plugins. It's generally very positive for the ecosystem. And so I'm very excited for, honestly, Codex to get integrated. I think for anyone that's not familiar, it will probably happen in the next 2 weeks. So, yeah, big news. And hopefully we see some big improvements in the coming days.
I cannot wait to check it out with you when it come out. It's gonna be like super exciting.
100%. Anything else we wanted to cover? I think that was
I think we have so
pretty
much
much
to
it.
cover this week already. I hope for exciting news in the next coming week.
Yeah, likewise. And we will, yeah, I think probably, hopefully, maybe next time we talk, we'll have some more news from, OpenAI on things like organic as well. I'm sort of expecting that, but we'll have to wait and see when they touch that topic. But I think that's everything.
Yeah, and honestly, I think also next week we should look more into cloud as well, because it seems like OpenAI is having a lot. But the moment you build MCP apps, you get exposure to both ChatGPT and Claude. So I would love to let's check out Claude together next week.
Yeah, 100%. We can do some updates there. Very good. All right. Well, you know where to find us. We will share some links to everything we discussed in the comments, and we will catch you next week. Cool.